There's one dynamics processor which is specifically tailored for working with vocals, and that is the DeEsser. Now, when we're recording vocals in a nice studio with a nice mic, it's frequently the case that what we want to do at the mix stage is to modify its tone. And it's really common that often what we'll do is to modify the brightness of a sound so that the vocal feels a bit brighter and a bit warmer and a bit sweeter. And that's fine, except that in the process of doing that, often what we do is we make our vocals more sibilant, which is that the S sounds that feature within a vocal suddenly become a bit like white noise. They're a bit aggressive, they sound loud, and in particular when they interact with reverb, they tend to really dominate a mix. So what is often the case is that we want to use a DeEsser, which is a frequency-specific dynamics controller, which allows us to find the frequencies of the sibilants and to reduce them at the same time as leaving all other frequencies alone. So what we have a chance to do within Logic is to come into the Dynamics folder and to come and find DeEsser 2. This is a modified version of the original DeEsser that was built for Logic. So effectively what we need to do here is, firstly, I'm going to solo the vocal in this project so we can hear exactly what we're working on. We're going to effectively move a detection dial, a threshold point effectively, to specify the volume threshold where above which we're going to then sort of attenuate the sibilant frequencies. What we then have a chance to do over in those sibilant frequencies is decide the maximum volume that we're going to reduce those by. Now at the moment you can see that that's set here. This little slider, I can either adjust it here or with the dial over on the left hand side, and this is going to sort of set a maximum level of volume reduction. Now it can sound really unnatural to hit DS or S sounds really hard and reduce their volume so completely that they almost drop out of the mix. That can sound really unnatural. So again, from one vocal to another, the amount of maximum reduction is going to be something that we're going to think carefully about. What we've then got is the frequency of the de-essing. Now, of course, every singer is different. The tone of everyone's voice is different. And the same thing seems to be true with de-essing as well, that sibilant frequencies crop up at different points for different vocalists. So what we have a chance to do is to choose the frequency we want to attenuate. Drop in level, in other words. We can either make a relatively narrow frequency choice using split, or a much wider one depending on which range we select. And in addition to the frequency selector, what we've also got is a mode button. Relative mode works with high and low level signals, whereas absolute concentrates on high level signals. So again, we've got a choice there in terms of deciding whether we want the sort of classic de-essing of absolute mode or this slightly more musical relative mode. We've also got a chance to choose what type of filter we want to use. Do we want a shelf, a high shelf, so that effectively from this frequency point upwards, everything is de-essed? Or do we want more of a bell curve where effectively we're setting a narrower group of frequencies around the frequency selection point that we've made up in the top right-hand corner? More often than not, that's going to be a better choice. Now, how do you know the frequency of the sibilants and the problem area that you're going to be working on? Well, the useful thing here is that we've got a filter in the bottom right-hand corner. If we engage that, we're only hearing frequencies around this frequency point, allowing us to find exactly where our sibilant lives and exists. So what I'm going to do is to turn that off for now. We'll have a listen through this vocal and we'll see how DeEsser 2 is reducing sibilants and whether or not we need to modify a few settings in order to do that in a sort of more musical way.
Love ain't simple with you anymore. We have become opposite. No, love ain't simple with you anytime. Battle lines drawn.
Okay, let's monitor the DeEsser.
Love ain't simple with you anymore. We have become opposite. No, love ain't simple with you anytime. Battle lines drawn.
So you can see that as I modify the threshold point, the the signal has to get louder in order to be de-essed. And if I turn it up really high, then effectively none of the signal has a chance to be de-essed because it's just not getting loud enough. Similarly, if I drop it too low, more of the signal is being de-essed, including parts of the signal which aren't actually sibilant. So again, I need to be careful there, and I also need to be careful when it comes to deciding how much maximum reduction I want to apply, because I don't want to make this effect too extreme. Now, really the only way to judge this is to put this back into the mix and see how the S's are sounding now. What I'm going to do is to play through the entire track once without de-essing, and then we'll hear the effect that these settings are having, and we might tweak them a little bit as we listen back.
Loving ain't simple with you anymore. We have become opposite. No, loving ain't simple with you anytime. Battle lines drawn.
Okay, let's put the processor in.
Loving ain't simple with you anymore. We have become opposite. No, loving ain't simple with you anytime. Battle lines drawn.
So actually that's working really nicely. We've just selected the moments where sibilance is a little bit of a problem, and what we're doing is to attenuate it enough that those moments are just getting dropped. Now you can see that the attack time and release time of a DeEsser, they're both really fast. We don't actually have control over those, but you can see from the needles, from the detection and reduction stages, how quickly the processor is responding to problem frequencies and adjusting their volume, and how quickly the recovery time is at the end of those as well. So DeEsser 2 is a really nice way of being able to just address sibilant issues within vocals.